Yeah, and at the big dog hunt. Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Kallas Remarks with your host, Joe Staszak, Steve Kallas, Johnny Kallas in the house today. How you guys doing? Good to see you, Johnny.
Good to see you, Joe. Great to be with you guys as always.
You too. You too, Steven. How are you?
Great to be with both of you. When we can get Johnny, we're lucky.
Well, here we go, guys. Let's why don't we start with the Chiefs and the Ravens because the Ravens are a team that are kind of spinning out of control. Lamar Jackson can't seem to get over the hump when he plays those guys, and Chiefs looked kind of very much like they used to look. Put up a lot of points. Mahomes with four touchdown passes. Um, Xavier Worthy obviously helps that he's back and lends some speed and some spark to that team. And they're 2-2 on their way, righting the ship a little bit. And the Ravens, although they're 1-3, apparently they're still the odds-on favorite to win the AFC North, even though with Pittsburgh at 3-1. I just heard that on the air. At least Vegas has them as the odds-on favorite at 1-3. I think they're done because they can't stop anyone. Johnny, your thoughts on the mess that's the Ravens?
No, you're totally right, Joe. It's amazing how far the Ravens have come. I mean, I remember the Ravens of old who, had clutch quarterback play and just an absolutely great, ferocious defense. And it's
Defense was nasty.
been totally flipped on its head, right? I mean, they have, one of the three best quarterbacks in football who got injured in this game. I don't know if that's going to impact him going forward. And the defense that, like you said, just gets absolutely run over at will. I mean, it's just not Ravens football. I know that they have Lamar. It's bizarre for me to watch after watching them for all those years. So the Ravens are in trouble. I mean, they benefit from being, you would think the AFC North is on paper one of the toughest divisions, but the Browns, can't move the ball on offense. The Bengals are without Burrow.
Yep.
And the Steelers are 3-1, though a bit of a tenuous 3-1. But no, I mean the Ravens, they just can't stop anybody. And Lamar, for as good as he is, I mean, really not only struggles against the Chiefs, struggles against the Bills,
I was against the Bills.
against the best competition in the AFC. So they have some problems. They're always, it seems like the preseason favorite, and they always disappoint come playoff time. Now they're 1-3. They're disappointing early in the regular season. So we'll have to see where it goes.
Chiefs kind of righted themselves a little bit, Steve, though.
Oh, absolutely. But again, we talked about when they could get their speed, and Worthy is part of their speed. Rasheed Rice will be the rest of it when they show up. They kind of look like the Chiefs of yesteryear, and I don't even mean the Chiefs of last year when they just won every game by 3 points or whatever. Um, but I don't know if it's too early to say this, but I think Lamar, I don't know if he's lost a step or they're just playing him so much better where they kind of keep him inside. He can't get out like he used to. He has one or two maybe, but he's not the threat that he was. 7 sacks last week. And then this week he wasn't a big factor running all over the place. And that's a big part of who he is and who they are. And as Johnny said on defense, I mean, they just can't stop anybody. I mean, I think the bets in Raven games, as we said the week before, Joe, was what's the bet? Oh, the over is the bet.
Yeah, this is right.
Because they're giving up a lot and they still have the ability to score. I don't know what happened to Henry. I mean, he had two fumbles in 2 weeks that he lost in the fourth quarter. And it was 9 years before that that he lost two fumbles in the fourth quarter for the whole 9 years. So he's had his problems too. And he's kind of losing it a little bit mentally when you hear him talking about it now, or when you saw his reaction after the second one, when he pretty much broke his helmet on the bench.
Yeah, not happy.
But they just don't have, look, even if they're good, they're going to win 35-31 or something. They're not winning any, as
No,
John would say, old time
that
Ravens games,
that
20
doesn't fly
nothing.
in the playoffs when you bring that kind of defense and a
And as
defense
for
travels.
Mahomes, yeah, Mahomes is still Mahomes. I mean, what are you going to say? But now he's getting his weapons back. I don't think Kelsey's quite what he was, but he's okay. And he doesn't have to be the main guy. But now with Worthy and some speed, and they got some other speed, and they got Rasheed Rice coming back. I mean, they're going to be okay, I think. And they still have Spags. I mean, Spags is the guy who can get you somehow, some way. He always seems to get you. Not the Eagles, of course, last year, but he is the difference maker among all these guys that we talk about now. 20, 30 years ago, nobody talked about the coordinators, assuming they even had some. But nowadays, he's the number one coordinator, I think, defense coordinator, of course. But I think they're going to be able to be the Chiefs. And after watching the Giants beat the Chargers, I think the Chiefs are going to be okay. because the Chargers, their line is shot already. It's game four and their Herbert was running for his life last 2 days ago, I should say. And to me, that's how the Giants won. I mean, I don't know if we're going to talk about the Giants, but the new quarterback gave him a spark. Unfortunately, they won the battle but lost the war because Neighbors is out for the season now. So if you thought there was any hope for the Giants, there's like not real hope for the Giants now without him. Would have been nice to see
Without
them play
neighbors.
10 games.
And I'll
But
swing back to them, but I wanted to get to the other undefeated team. There's two. Buffalo, I mean, look, they're away with the Saints, but Eagles are undefeated. And do they look a little like the Chiefs of last year, winning games and winning one-score games, and they're finding ways to win because their offense disappears. They didn't have a passing yard in the second half against Tampa. 0 for 8 was Jalen Hurts. In the first half last week against the Rams, they had -1 passing yard, and then they exploded in the second half. They blocked 3 kicks in the last, 2 weeks. They blocked one 2 minutes into the game the other day, a punt that got run back by Sidney Brown, and they find ways to get turnovers in the second half. Jihad Campbell had an interception, and Bucky Irving fumbled. And they gave up some big plays, but it was a 24-6 lead, and it was a little too much to overcome. Birds are 4-0. They're winning ugly. Is it sustainable, Johnny?
Yeah, so look, I think with the Eagles, they what Hurts has started to do such a great job of is just not turn the ball over. I mean, it's really amazing how many games in the NFL you can win by not turning the ball
Got
over,
one turnover in 4 games. Yeah,
by taking advantage of other opportunities. Now, he tried to throw a couple.
he
Uh,
did.
he,
He did.
he
Second
tried to throw
half.
a couple. And I will say, I'm quite impressed with Tampa and Baker Mayfield, but this was such a Baker game because I was watching that second half and they were really coming back. And I'll tell you, when the Eagles, it's one thing if your offense like slows down, but there are times when the Eagles offense just grinds to a screeching halt. I
Halt.
mean, they just end
Halt.
up doing absolutely nothing. Like you said, no passing yards for an entire second half. They keep winning though. But I will say, it was such a Baker. They're driving down the field down 8. And the Eagles have absolutely nothing going for them on offense. If they just put up a field goal, never mind a touchdown, they put a tremendous amount of pressure. And Baker, for as good as he is, just ends up losing his mind, rolling right,
That was a first
getting out of
down
a
too. That was a first down.
and just throws it to the other guy in the end zone where they could have put so much pressure on Philadelphia, even if they just get 3 in that moment. So I actually think it says, Tampa could have quietly been, they're in a terrible division, could have I just don't see as good as Baker has been. It's just hard to imagine in the playoffs he could go 3 games in a row without making, unfortunately, a really stupid older Baker
Older
mistake
Baker
that
type of
ends up
mistake.
costing you a game because he has been so, I have to give him so much credit. I'm not a big Baker fan, but he has been so good for that team. And, with the Sabuka, they draft incredibly well.
You
Uh,
do.
but no, I know your original question was about Philadelphia. I would just say if you don't turn the ball over, you can go a long way in this league. But I'll tell you, man, if you're not going to win a Super Bowl throwing 0 yards in the second half, you're going to need a little bit something. You can't just come to a total screeching halt like they have at times.
And they have, AJ Brown not really pleased. They did try to throw him the ball in the second half. I think Jalen was off. He had 7 yards, 2 catches for 7 yards after he had a pretty big game second half against the Rams. The Dallas game I thought was an interesting game. It was certainly entertaining, Steve. 40-40. You're not going to see a lot of defense out of Dallas. Packers, though, they were the team after 2 games. People thought, hey, this is the team. They're coming around. They're coming together. Then they go in and, Jordan Love throws a bad pick in the Cleveland game. They lose that. And the clock operator, I don't know if he flew him in from Wisconsin because that could have gone to 0 there at the end of overtime. And I know Michael Irvin was pretty unhappy about it, but 40-40, wildly entertaining game. Dak looks great this year, and the offense looks pretty good. And George Pickens is having a year. But the Packers, I thought, had an opportunity to finish that game. Jordan Love throws a check down with 26 seconds left clock. They let it run all the way down, and they throw one more pass and almost cost them the game. Your thoughts on the Pack? And Michael Parsons saves the game. It looked like when Romo fumbled the snap against Seattle in that playoff game, and he got tackled as he was running in. Parsons, got Dak by the legs and saved the game.
Yeah, but I think everybody kind of shut up after that game. I certainly thought that the Packers were going to beat them easily. and of course was wrong. But it's what you said. Love does love things. Baker does Baker things. You can't rely on these guys all the time. And I think that's kind of the difference. I think the Eagles are kind of like the Chiefs of last year because they're barely winning. And you got a guy who's unhappy. AJ Brown is unhappy, and you don't want that kind of thing in the locker room. What are they? 19-1 now, their last 20, right, Joe? So when
They are
I,
20-1 in their last 21 since that game last year in Tampa where they got smoked.
So I'll say it again. When you have your team wins and you get two catches for 7 yards, and he does that, oh, just go away, don't say anything. I don't even know who he's talking to because what's he going to do? Leave in the middle of the season? But as for the Packers, they've come back to the pack, no pun intended. But after the first two games, you were like shaking your head. These guys are incredible. But you're right about the Cowboys. They're going to win some games, but most of their games are going to be over games. I think almost. We make picks every week, Joe. And I said last week, the week before with the Ravens, I said, well, the Ravens, the best bet is over. And they had like 68 points in the game or something,
They
something
go
crazy.
41 to Buffalo and then their first game, big comeback. I mean, they can't stop anyone.
Right. So when we're talking about who's standing out, I guess, Buffalo's standing out, but the Packers have come back to the pack. The Chiefs, I think, are going to be better. That's no surprise. And they still have the ability. Their defense is really good. I'm not going to say it's super good, but once again, they have a coordinator who can really change the game and does change the game. And that's kind of frankly what helped them last year. They were more of a defensive team than an offensive team last year. They can put those two together, maybe they come back to being the Chiefs. And as for the Eagles, you guys are right. I mean, 0 for 8 in the second half. It's kind of weird when you look at the numbers. And maybe you know this, Joe. I didn't, but the Eagles have been outgamed by the other team in all their victories this
All
year.
four games. I wrote a piece last night. I'm looking through the stat. I'm going, you got to be kidding me, really?
That's incredibly unusual. I don't know if they're going to have somebody look at this stuff to say the last time that happened was, 1938 or something.
Saquon hasn't had a 100-yard game since the Commanders NFC title game.
Well, I think everybody's kind of leaning that way now, and then so that's like, go ahead, beat me with the pass. Let me
Yeah,
see what you can do.
exactly.
As good as he is, but it's like. Uh, Barkley hasn't been Barkley. The line is still good, but everybody, I think, I don't know if they're all putting eight in the box. I haven't really watched that carefully, but they certainly go out to stop the run. And so far, it's worked pretty much for everybody, except nobody can beat the Eagles.
Well, yeah, this is true. Well, Landon Dickerson has a little bit of a back tweak. Lane Johnson has
And
basically
Johnson.
missed the better part of two games, and
Yeah.
he's a Hall of Famer. And they really, as he goes, when he plays, that they're a very successful team when Lane Johnson's in. And I know
Yep.
Fred Johnson did a nice job when he came in for the Rams to replace Steen, but it's Lane Johnson's not there. They're a different team, and they haven't really executed the way their offensive line has been kind of their weak spot so far this year. The team that I think is has been impressive. I know that okay, they beat the Browns and they smoked the Bears, but after the game, the opening game in Lambeau, which they did not play well, the Detroit Lions, I thought they looked very impressive and explosive. And I know Dan Campbell wasn't even happy about the 34 to what was it, 34 to 10 win over the Browns the other day, but I think they look pretty sharp. They look like a dangerous team with all the weapons they have, Johnny.
Yeah, I think the Lions are, they seem like they're back. And as you said, we're going to have to see against really good competition. But certainly, week 4 in the season, they're trending up and the Packers are trending down. But they just have so many weapons, as you said. They're great up front. They have Gibbs, they have Brown, Jared Goff is throwing the ball, and their defense now is
David
healthy. I mean,
Montgomery, yeah.
they're real, and Montgomery, yeah, you're absolutely right. Montgomery and Gibbs are far and away the best 1-2 punch in football, or I guess Gibbs Montgomery, depending on how you look at it. But I think what the key is once again, playing Cleveland, Joe Flacco, who talking about that clutch quarterback play I was mentioning for the Ravens was sort of the guy, but he just doesn't belong in the NFL anymore. At least starting quarterback. We'll have to see if they end up going to Gabriel or eventually Sanders. But what the big difference is their defense seems to be back, and obviously that was their problem. Half of them were out.
They're injured, yeah.
in the playoffs last year. So, yeah, I mean, if you're looking for that team in the NFC, look, I know what you guys are saying about the Eagles. Turnovers, turnovers, though. If you win the turnover battle, the problem for the Eagles is if they don't win the turnover battle, are they going to be able to win football games? We'll have to see.
Right.
But it's hard, Lions, maybe Rams, those are the teams that seem to be going to be in most competition in the NFC.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned the Rams because I like watching Naku. I think he should be talked about as one of the top three receivers in the league. He had more catches the other day than Brown has had in like 4 games. He had 13 catches for a buck 70. It's basically it used to be Cooper Cup, when you need a play, let's just keep throwing the ball to Cup. Now it's just Nakua, and he's unstoppable. But the Colts, I think, are for real. They had an opportunity to win this game. They had a play to Adonai Mitchell, who caught a kind of got turned around, caught a pass, and then kind of put the ball out right before he was crossing the goal line, fumbled it. Turned out to be a touchback. And then Jonathan Taylor has a nice long run for a touchdown a little later again. He gets called for a holding. Mitchell does. He was kind of the goat in the game, but they had an opportunity to beat the Rams in LA. And I know Daniel Jones threw a bad pick late. Um, he had 2 interceptions the other day, but he's been playing pretty good ball. How for real, Steve, are the Colts?
I think Daniel Jones is the MVP, at least after 3 games, maybe not after 4. But no, I think they're real good. I think they did have a chance to beat the Rams. The Rams are at home, so I expected them, one of my few winning picks, I might say, Joe. But picks don't matter the first 6 weeks of the year. That's how we're going, Johnny. So we're protected for 6 weeks.
Dallas saved me from an 0-3 week, down six and a
We'll
half
see you in weeks.
in a
We'll see you in
tie.
week 7, Johnny. That's what it really
That's
counts.
right.
But no, I think Nakua is the best receiver in football. I really do. But
So good.
guy's amazing. He had 13 receptions for 170 yards and a touchdown. And yeah, the Rams did beat the Colts, but I think the Colts are for real. And I think a lot of it is Daniel Jones finally playing on a team where he gets some time and he has some, pretty good receivers and he has a running game, which always helps these QBs. So I think, yeah, I don't know that they're going to beat the best teams. And the Rams now, to me, have lifted themselves up into the upper elite anyway, at least to talk about them. They kind of missed it in the playoffs sometimes. But I think the Rams are for real, but I think the Colts are for real as well. And I certainly didn't think that before the season started. But give Daniel Jones a lot of credit, man. He's played really well. This is the first not great game that he had this year.
That is absolutely correct, and had an opportunity still to win the game, and probably would have had a better fate if Mitchell. I don't know, did you see that? The guys when Mitchell put the ball, I've seen guys do that, but Deshaun Jackson. Monday Night Football's first touchdown, he drops it behind him a yard from the goal line. Like, can't you wait till you get like, to the back of the end zone? So
Beyond stupid. It's beyond
it's
stupid.
yeah, it was unfortunate because a real nice catch. He turned the defender around, like a 70-yard catch. Before I get into another game, I was just thinking this. I did a spoof last week on the NFL trying to outlaw everything the Eagles do besides the tush push, blocking field goals, and AJ Brown, doing the step over like the Iverson Tyronn Lue with one of the Rams
Yeah.
defensive backs. But in that Rams game, I thought it was ridiculous. Nakua did one of these. He caught a pass and then kind of flexed a little bit and then did a first down. He got called for taunting. Thought that was a little much. Not that he did that. I thought that much the flag there. And then in the game against Tampa, I don't know if you saw this. Cooper DeJean, great tackler. You saw that one he tackled made on Derrick Henry last year in the open field. He makes a nice tackle, and he kind of just gets up. It wasn't an accentuated Iverson over. Remember Iverson over Tyronn Lue when he steps over him and like
Yeah.
after he hits the three, he just kind of like got up and tried to go back to his defense. High five. They gave him a 15-yarder for taunting. Did you guys see that by chance? If you didn't, it's okay. I was watching it again because I didn't see it live, or they didn't make a thing of it. I saw, it might have been Get Up doing a thing on it yesterday. I thought it was so ridiculous. Are they getting too ticky tacky with these taunting calls?
I think they are, but I think it's a point of interest this year. That's what you always hear when they start
Yeah,
calling.
they're trying, but it was,
I
yeah.
mean, how many neutral zone infractions on both teams have you seen called this year? I mean, it's just incredible. And they say, oh, it's a point of interest, or we've been told, the refs have been told to really play on that. And I think that leads to mistakes. As for the taunting, it's almost like you got to, they call the NFL for a few years. You'll remember the no fun league.
No fun
You
league,
really
right?
couldn't do any of that stuff. But the trick is to avoid doing it anywhere near or around or above or beneath a player on the other team, because that's what they're looking for now. And frankly, that's what they're calling. And these things are 15-yard penalties. And I think they've changed a couple of games around because of these kinds of
Big, it's a big chunk.
stupid penalties on the one hand, but overreach. But if you know by now, you have to know by now if you're a player, they're overreaching, and anything you do like that could be a 15-yard penalty. And I think it's changed a couple of games this year.
It has. Johnny, now I want to circle back to the Giants and the Chargers game. Jackson Dart comes in, goes right down the field, calls his own number, the quarterback's draw play, and unfortunately, Malik Neighbors goes out and he's done for the year and whatnot. But they showed a little something. The Chargers were a team coming in 3-0, and I don't know if they were smelling themselves, but I know they had to go across country, and the Chiefs went into MetLife the week before and played a very uninspired Giants team. No Russell Wilson this time. I think that Dart provided some energy at least. I know Dable and Schoen are trying to save their jobs, and our prayers go out to John Marrow who came out, he has cancer now, but the owner of the Giants. But what did you think about? Again, the NFL, and Steve and I talk about it all the time. It's a different season every week, and people always go, "Well, how did that happen?" Well, because it's the NFL. How did the Giants beat the Chargers? They do because they're professional football players, and they get paid a lot of money. And I thought they did a nice job bottling up the Chargers. And Steve mentioned it earlier about the Justin Herbert thing, and some of the offensive lines a little banged up. But the Giants coming out, and that's kind of a statement win for Jackson Dart. What did you think of that?
Yeah, I thought you were going to ask me about those Patriots bringing the clock back like it's 2015.
I was going to, and I diverted.
Oh, we'll get to that, I'm sure.
Well, here's what I'll say. I'll let Steve, who's our resident Giants fan, chime in. But I do think, as Steve said earlier, won the battle, lost the war. And I will also say, it's tough for you go on the road in a place like the Meadowlands, a team that you don't know at all, meaning Chiefs, Giants last week, Chargers, Giants this week. Sometimes you're due after a few weeks. I mean, the Chargers obviously won 3 games. It's a tough loss. It's not an easy place to play, but I'll let Steve talk about that game.
No, I just think the Giants have a good defense to begin with, and now they have a real good defense when the other team's line. I think they were missing 2 starters or something, but Herbert looked like bad in the playoffs, Herbert. But like all quarterbacks, if you're going to have a big rush on him, I mean, the Giants won. I saw some stat. The Giants won the pass rushing stat. They won it for a higher percentage this week than they have since 2017 or something. And they do have a good defense. Will this guy have enough of a spark as a young quarterback? I thought they were setting them up to beat New Orleans this week, and I think you have to like the Giants, New Orleans. I don't know what the spread is or anything like that, but I think you have to like the Giants. I started thinking about Rattler on New Orleans. He's now 0-10 as a starter in the league, and he was in a battle with the second round pick this year. I don't know how long they go with him. He's played okay, don't get me wrong, but I don't know who they're going to beat. But I think the Giants, what I said, they won the battle, they won the game. Dable's trying to save his job, which is why he made the change. I mean, Wilson, I don't know if he's done, but he throws 450 yards between 2 horrific games. And you just don't know if he's throwing it up for grabs. And he had a guy in Neighbors who could go up there and get it. He doesn't have that guy isn't around anymore. Won't be around for either of them. So I think the Giants are okay, but I think Dable's frankly just trying to save his job, and he had to do something. I'm surprised they came back, but John Mara said he wanted to have a little. He didn't want to change coaches every year, which it seems like he could have changed coaches again, but he hasn't. But now Dable has an excuse, so we'll see how hard the Giants play. Again, they have a really good defense, I think, and they have now an okay offense that has become average or even less than average because you just lost your best offensive player, if not your best player on your whole team, who was incredible last year. Uh,
109 catches, catching balls from Tommy, Donuts or whatever his name was. Um, Ridiculous. Let's talk about the Patriots a little bit. We'll go to our resident expert, our resident Foxborough expert, because that was the 5.5 point game, Steve. It's not week 6 yet, so okay, I got smoked there. Carolina, smokes Atlanta the week before, shuts them out. Atlanta comes back and beats the Commanders. I know, albeit without Jaden Daniels, and then the Patriots just stomped the Panthers this past weekend. Drake May, your thoughts on Drake May and Mike Vrabel and the job he's doing in Foxborough?
I think May, look, this is America's going to see this week that they're going to Buffalo Sunday night, which
Right.
is going to be a really excellent test. And I think, I probably like the Patriots to cover. I don't know about, I'm curious to see what that money line is. But Drake May he really has made that second year leap. And I'm talking as somebody who's been a little bit more cautious than others in Foxborough who are really up on him going into the offseason this past year. I think he has the first or second highest completion percentage in football, won 14 of 17 this past weekend. They still lack a bit of talent, but he has a really good sense of when to scramble. His accuracy has improved. Their offensive line play isn't great, but it's definitely better. So I think overall, New England, they've had a pretty easy schedule. Look, they lost to a Raiders team they should have beat week one. They snuck by Dolphins. They turned the ball over 5 times against Pittsburgh. If they turned the ball over 3 times, they would have won that game. They had a convincing win against Carolina. They haven't played anybody good yet. We'll see against Buffalo. In terms of Vrabel, I think, changing the culture, whatever it might be. I don't know how much I buy into that, though I guess he's done that a little bit. What I've been disappointed is they're still one of the most penalized teams in football. And that's a direct reflection on the coaching staff. Yes, he's
Starters.
brought in a lot of new guys. But like I said, the big test is this week. But if you're a Patriot fan, which I am, and you're thinking about big picture, I think they found their guy. I mean, I think May's on his way.
I
I
do
don't think this
too.
is hyper really. I think he's on his way to being a top 10 quarterback in this league. And he's doing it, not exactly with the greatest weapons around him either.
No, he does have Stephon Diggs with 106 yards, and he looked like the old Stephon Diggs the other day, coming off that major injury and getting bounced around a little bit. 7.5 point favorite of the Bills. And by the way, Steve, the Saints are a 1.5 point favorite over the Giants next week in New Orleans. Yeah, the other one game I want to talk about because Steve and I bounce around Brock Purdy all the time, and Jacksonville, goes into San Fran. Jacksonville's 3-1 right now, by the way, guys. Don't look now. And the Niners were 3-0, and they got beat pretty handily. And your thoughts on that? Because Brock Purdy came back through a couple interceptions. And Trevor Lawrence was decent, and a little bit of mouthing afterwards. Robert Saleh and the head coach of Jacksonville, he said, I think Saleh on Friday said something like, "Yeah, he has a nice legal system of stealing signs." He was talking about the Jacksonville coach.
Yeah.
Got into it a little bit afterwards, but um, Christian McCaffrey seems healthy, but those two interceptions, which Johnny talked about it earlier, all show. I talk about it all the time. Turnovers, turnovers, turnovers. You got to protect the football, and they didn't, and they lost. Your thoughts?
Well, to me, it's unPurdy like. He did miss those games. I still think he was playing a little bit hurt. He just felt he had to get back into the game. He did go 28 for 38 for 309 yards, 2 touchdowns, but Lloyd had 2 picks on him, as you said. The 2 picks really, really hurt them. Um, and also, they had Washington had an 87-yard punt return for a touchdown for the Jags. We're seeing more punt returns, more block kicks. I don't know if anybody's looking at the special teams just as special teams, but my goodness, I think we've seen more already than we usually see in the season, blocked for touchdowns and stuff like that. I mean, that
A lot
just
of
doesn't
blocks, a lot
happen.
of block kicks. Look, the Bears won a game the other day
Yeah.
against the Raiders blocking. I know it was only
But
50
I
yards,
think
but
Purdy needed a week. I just don't know how they're going to be. They're always injured. How many years in a row is this now? They're injured 3 years in a row, I think. You always think they're going to be this, they're going to be that. But Debo Samuel has left town, as you know. And I think they don't quite have the incredible depth that they used to have, where you could miss Debo Samuel and still have great runnings. I think everyone's kind of leaning to McCaffrey because McCaffrey is still a great two-way threat as a
no,
runner and a receiver. But I think they're just not quite that good. But I would give Purdy a week. And again, his numbers were spectacular, except for 2 interceptions. But except for 2 interceptions, other other than the assassination, Mrs. Lincoln has lost
right,
the
Mrs.
play kind of
Lincoln.
thing. But I think the 49ers are a factor, but not a big factor. They're just not at the beginning of the year. In the past, you'd always go, they can do it, they can do it, they can do it. And now I just don't think they can do it.
Last one, because it'll be a little bit of a preview, Johnny. Broncos played last night, and then they're in town in Philly, 4.5 point dogs on Sunday. I wasn't one of those people who jumped on the Broncos this year because of their last year. I think they got into the playoffs last year. Nice year with Bo Nix and everything. I needed to see a little bit more, and they came out and struggled a little bit. They're 2-2, beat the Bengals last night. Without Joe Burrow, that's completely a different team. And Bo Nix has not been good. He was okay last night. He was pretty good. What are your thoughts on the Broncos? Where are they now? Again, it's early in the season, so a lot of teams take a little while to get going. And this might, it's his second year. He was very accurate passer in both colleges. He went to Oregon and Auburn, and had a nice year with Sean Payton last year. Broncos defense kind of gets a lot of bells and whistles. What are your thoughts on the Broncos?
Yeah, I will. Unlike you, Joe, I was one. It's not looking great right now, but it's still very early. Who bought the Broncos in the offseason? I thought Knicks could really make a second-year leap under Peyton. I thought they have as good of a defense as anyone, a front four that can really get after the passer. They're 2-2. They lose on the road to the Colts, which isn't looking like a terrible loss now. They lost on the road to the Chargers in a very close game. They beat, I forget who they beat week one, the Titans or someone, and they beat the Bengals, so they haven't had impressive wins. But I think that's a good test. What Nick's has done, he's turned the ball over a little bit, and against Philly, that's the one thing you can't do. But I'm still cautiously optimistic about Denver in this league to go far, especially in January, and they're not there yet. But you need a front four that can get after the passer. And they do have some playmakers, man. Cortland Sutton's an excellent receiver. Mims is a playmaker. J.K. Dobbins, who came over from the Chargers, has ran the ball really well.
Really
Really.
well.
So I think if Knicks can cut down on the turnovers, I think, and we'll see this week, I think they can compete with just about anybody, but that's a big if.
Last one, Steve. We didn't talk about the only other undefeated team in the league, the Bills. I mean, they keep, they rolled. They were home. They rolled the Saints, won by 11. Okay, that's, it's the NFL. We're not going to win by 30 points every week, but they seem to be very complete. Dalvin Cook's brother, I don't know whatever happened to Dalvin Cook. You remember, Steve, I wanted the Eagles to draft him.
Yes.
His brother has just really overtaken that family name, and he's been killing it for Buffalo. And Josh Allen has really, really, really cut down on his turnovers that he used to. I mean, that was kind of his thing early in, his career, and you can see a difference, Johnny. We talked about it all show. When you don't turn the ball over and you protect the football, good things are going to happen. And Josh Allen has done a really, really good job of that. They are 4 now. This might be the year that the Chiefs aren't the Chiefs, and we'll see what happens because a lot of things can happen before January. But Steve, your thoughts on how good the Bills are?
The Bills are real good. He's real good. They're 4-0. They're probably the best team in the AFC right now if you had to rank them.
I would, yeah.
Still obviously rank the Eagles in the NFC, despite what everyone's saying about them. Again, it's kind of like the Chiefs last year, but it didn't help them in the Super Bowl when they just got, run over by the
Yeah,
Eagles, frankly.
obliterated. Yeah.
But I think right now, if you had to do a power ranking, Rick Morris does those power rankings. I think the Bills would be number one. Using both conferences, I think the Bills would be number
I'd
one.
put them number one.
And we'll have to see. As Johnny said, this is a real good test this week to go play the Bills. But we'll see what happens. I agree with them on the Broncos. They lost the game that they won. They won the game. The game was over.
Yeah.
They lost it. So that would be you'll be looking at them totally different if they were 3-1 and had won that game because they frankly did win that game until after they say play through the buzzer, play right through the zero when the clock was out. The game was over.
It
But that's
was.
how it is. And Sean Payton, I think not the genius people thought he was because to have just even plays like that, you should almost tell these guys, don't use leverage. That's the only, it was such a long field goal, but well, that's irrelevant now. But Broncos have a great defense, I think, Johnny. I think their front four is really good, but I understand 3 points to the Bengals, but they can get to the quarterback with four, and that's the key to having a really good defense, and they can do that. So we'll see what happens this weekend. I think the Broncos still are, I think they're really good. I think Nick's has to be better. Has he improved from last year? If he has, it's only been a little, but it's also only been 4 games. So you got to give the guy a little bit of time in your second year as well as in your rookie year.
I,
Can I
I
just say?
Yeah, go
Sorry,
ahead,
John.
John. No,
No,
go
no, I
ahead.
was just the only thing about the Bills, and I think the Bills absolutely have to put them top of the test. Ravens, Jets, Dolphins, Saints. Those are the
This
four
is true.
wins.
That's a very
And
good point.
they got, look, I want New England to be good, but they got New England, Atlanta, Carolina. Like these AFC, I think the AFC East gets the NFC South this year, and it's just, the NFC South, except for the Bucks, is really hard to watch. So I think it's going to be a while before well, I mean, we'll see this week. It's going to be a while before we really know how good Buffalo is. I think they have Kansas City after that. That's about as I can't think of an easier 7 games to start the season. So I think you have to be up on the Bills, but they haven't really beaten anyone yet. They beat the Ravens, but they haven't really beaten anybody who can defend the football yet.
Right. I did want to circle back because I think this is a little bit of a fascinating story with Kevin, O'Connell and what he's done in Minnesota. And they get rid of a guy who's won 14 games, goes to Seattle, Sam Darnold, and is playing ball in Seattle. And they kept the guy who was injured for his what would have been his rookie year, JJ McCarthy, and then he plays one good quarter, and like he's a rookie, it's hard to expect a whole lot, but now he's hurt again, and then you have Carson Wentz coming in, and they go out to Dublin, and they get beat by the Steelers, and they don't look great doing it. And I know Carson Wentz hasn't really played a lot of football in the last few years, he's bounced around from like 6 teams, but what do you think of that move to? Again, keep JJ McCarthy, and he may turn out to be a very good quarterback, but you had a 14 winning, you had a window too. You have a good defensive coordinator, Brian Flores, and the Vikings can play ball on defense. And then all right, well, now we're going to shove a rookie in because our other guy, we don't want to pay him a lot of money, and we're going to let him go. And he goes off to Seattle, and he's doing well in Seattle. And, I never was a big Sam Darnold fan, but it looks like he can play a little bit.
I think, yeah, and Steve, I don't know if you want to. I think the problem for Darnold last year is just how he played in his last 2 games, right? I
Sure,
mean, he had two sort of, I guess Week 17 wasn't must win, but to win the division, played poorly, and then obviously in the playoffs played really poorly. But you're right. Right now, early returns, Joe. I mean, Sam Darnold's playing ball in Seattle. I think it's a little too early to say what they have in McCarthy. He had that
sure,
great comeback week 1, then he looked terrible, and now he's injured. But I think you have to give him a little bit of time to see how it turns out.
sure. Steve,
I
your
agree with
thoughts?
that, but I'll just say he had one real good quarter in 8 quarters that he's played. And that's a problem for him, though. Good, it was the fourth quarter in the first, in the game they won, but then he didn't look that great. But I don't know why you wouldn't want to pay Darnold. I guess if you tell me, if you take the Dallas theory, oh, we can get so many more players if we don't pay him 40 million. Oh, if we trade Parsons, we can get so many good players. So Dallas is going nowhere. And I don't know about the Vikings. They do have a real good defense, as Johnny said, but I don't know that this guy, he's a rookie quarterback, even though it's his second year. Obviously, he couldn't play all of last year, and now he's hurt again, which doesn't bode well for the next 5 years. I would.
Doesn't. My thing was that they kind of had a window. It wasn't like they were trying to rebuild like the Saints, let's try to
Yeah.
start this, Kellen Moore goes here, let's build from. They had a window and they had a
Yeah.
quarterback. Listen, I understand what happened in the Rams, but the Rams also almost knocked the Eagles out with 7 sacks in that playoff game, and it came within 13 yards. I mean, it wasn't a total fluke that they got blitzed, against the Rams that Minnesota did. In that neutral site. I think they played in Arizona last year because of the fires. But you had a guy like it's so hard to find a guy, a franchise guy, and I know he got a lot of criticism, and they would have had to pay him a lot of money, but they go with it's kind of like we're starting over. Here's our rookie, and well, I mean, we'll see how it plays out. Carson Wentz, I don't know is the answer, but again, he hasn't played a lot of football in a long time. You know what I mean?
MVP, MVP.
Yeah, that was it was like 8 years ago.
Five
Uh,
five teams ago or 6 teams
Literally
ago.
8 years ago.
Yeah, right. Yeah, we're literally 8 years ago. Good stuff, fellas. Good stuff, Johnny. We appreciate you coming on, adding your insights as always. You're always welcome to join the show because it's great stuff. Steve, you too. You can follow Steve's stuff on his daily Facebook forum page, Speaking of Sports with Steve Kallas. Also, his videos on WestchesterCountyPost.com. This podcast on YouTube each week, and also all as well as all the other audio outlets. You can follow me on Instagram at Joe Staszak 4799 or on Twitter X at Joe Staszak 975. Good stuff, fellas. We'll catch you Friday as we preview week 5.
Always a pleasure with both you guys.
You too.
Appreciate you guys.
All right, thanks, guys.